Welcome to Winning with the Burns, a podcast for highly ambitious people who have a burning desire to learn what it takes to win at a high level.
All right, guys, we are excited to have Mr. Rob Goldstein here with Wild Leap Brewery. Rob, we actually, when we started this podcast, I think we're in episode 7 right now, we had a list of people that we wanted on the podcast, and you guys were on this list. And I ran into you at Starbucks like within 2 or 3 days later. We've never met, and I just shared with you what we were doing, what we'd like to do, and you're like, "Hey, I'm in. Let's do it." So I want to thank you in advance for this. This is going to be a lot of fun. Doing a little research on you guys, hearing a little bit of your story. We're excited. We're very excited. Hopefully people will learn today about business, learn about having a dream, and learn about taking that step and going forward with it. So, Rob, kind of share with everybody that don't know you a little bit about your background and, where you're from and what you guys are doing right now.
Sure. So, yeah, I was born in Los Angeles. Excuse me. Went to college at Arizona State. And, I guess let me back up. I was born in Los Angeles, but when I was 12, moved to Alpharetta, Georgia from Los Angeles. And that was a bit of a culture shock because, I had never been to the South. And so, one day I'm in 7th grade in LA, and the next minute, you're kind of in this whole new group of folks that don't know anything about you and definitely don't like you. And
you talk weird too to them, probably.
Yeah. Had bigger high tops than, and puffy jackets that were in style in LA, and people looked at you like you're an alien in Atlanta.
And we're talking about Los Angeles, not Lower Alabama.
That's correct. Yes. That was another, little interesting learning experience. And when I said I was from LA, that it was Los Angeles and not Lower Alabama. So graduated high school, went to Chattahoochee High School in Alpharetta, Georgia, and then immediately went out west to Arizona State. But something happened along the way in my senior year in high school where I've always been into music and loved going to concerts and was a huge fan of classic rock, and was fortunate enough to convince an existing a classic rock radio station in Atlanta my senior year in high school to be an intern for them. And so every day I would get out of class at noon and drive from Alpharetta to Buckhead to be an intern. And it was just the coolest thing because I was around music. I was, replacing the little cartridges that carried the CDs and stapling papers, but I didn't care because I got to do it when I was in the studio with the DJ, and he was playing CDs and talking and all that kind of stuff. So when I went away to school, I thought, well, I'd love to figure out something in music to do. And my second semester, my freshman year at Arizona State, I got an internship with MTV. And what that essentially allowed me to do was be the Arizona State representative for interviewing bands that came through town, going to concerts, interviewing celebrities, all that kind of stuff. And mind you, I was living in a dorm with 3 other guys at the time. But it was cool because 1, I got to go to free concerts and get CDs, and 2 was that occasionally we would have artists call my dorm room for phone interviews and stuff. So I'd be sitting there with my little tape recorder and putting it up to the ear hole while I'm talking, and I'd be talking to somebody that I super respect, and I don't know, Pete Townsend of The Who and Ozzy Osbourne and people like that. And that was really exciting and kind of shaped the first many years of my career. So after college, having been working and doing freelance writing and blah, blah, blah for a long time, moved to Los Angeles to work for the William Morris Agency. And that is a talent agency where essentially we booked concert tours. Before then, I didn't know what a music agent did. I thought they negotiated record contracts and stuff. But in fact, if you're a band, you have a manager, you have attorneys, and then you have an agent. And that's what we did is whether it was little tiny bands or huge ones, we got to book their tours, whether they're playing clubs or playing stadiums, and that was a lot of fun. But eventually my love for music and the business and the way that it was done, and it it kind of stopped being fun after a while. And so I eventually decided that I didn't want to do that anymore. And at the same time, had kind of started a side gig of music consulting on the side, where essentially this was right during the iPod era when it kind of came about, where I started programming iPods for restaurants and bars, and they kind of found that when we would do this, my business partner, and I at the time, the sales would improve, and so we thought, well, there's something to it. So eventually, made the decision to leave William Morris and start this company, and did that in LA for 4 years, and eventually sold that and moved out back to Atlanta, which is where my family lives. And by then, I wasn't living in Alpharetta as like a high school kid and with not much to do. It was like I was living in Atlanta as an adult, and it became much more of an appealing city to live in, and it was super vibrant and a lot of fun.
Yeah, a lot of life experience from high school to moving back. So you guys have a beer and spirits company, and you're in the music industry. So
Yeah.
so how did so you come back to Atlanta? Now you were in event planning, right?
Yeah, so I was working for a company called the Gerber Group at the time, and some people confuse that as like the baby formula company, but
Yeah.
it was a nightlife company that was founded and run by Randy Gerber, who some know he's like married to Cindy Crawford, and started Casamigos Tequila with George Clooney and his brother Scott. So when I first got to Atlanta, I started working for them. Originally, it's kind of an interesting story. Going back to my music company in LA, my business partner was an attorney, and he was fairly older than I was. And so when we started getting differing ideas in terms of where we wanted our company to go, at some point came to a head. And well, he was an attorney and I wasn't, so ultimately he won. And went from living and working in LA with offices on the Sunset Strip to moving back in with my parents at age 29, kind of with my tail between my legs, and broke. But I heard that Gerber Group, which is an LA company or had offices in LA, was opening locations in Atlanta. And so I thought, well, look at all this experience I have in the music business, and I could just kind of waltz in there and, be their director of marketing, like no problem. And so I remember getting an interview and, speaking with the manager at the time about that, and, showing all my experience, yada, yada. And she said, well, listen, this is all great stuff, but we actually don't hire from the outside for any sort of marketing positions. I said, well, okay. This is the first time in a long time that I didn't have like professional responsibilities. My phone wasn't blowing up with all sorts of things. Like I had nothing. I didn't have a company. I was broke. I was living at my parents' house. Like I don't really have much going on. So, in college, I also bartended. Like I can be a bartender. They said, well, yeah, there's enough guy bartenders here, so we're good on that. And so I said, well, what can I do? They said, well, you can be a bar back. And I asked, well, what's a bar back? And they said, well, you take out the trash and you change bottles when they're empty, and just kind of shadow the bartenders and make sure that they have everything that they need. I said, well, okay, let's do it. And so my first job back in Atlanta, post music industry, post owning a company, was being a bar back at Whiskey Blue Atlanta in the W Buckhead Hotel, which was, pretty humbling and weird, I think, in a sense that like all the people I went to high school with are on the other side of the bar, seeing me, that I haven't seen in a long time, and I'm cleaning up their trash. So that was a challenge, but I decided that if I'm going to be a bar back, I'm going to be the best bar back I can be. And so like I was making spreadsheets for fruit wheels and all this stuff, like trying to organize it. And eventually they kind of took note, and I asked, well, could I start hosting events here, like promoting it and all that kind of stuff? And they let me do like organize a networking event, I think once a month. And then that started going okay. So I started doing more events, and eventually got the opportunity to start booking private events that were happening. And over time, my role evolved to where I was the director of marketing and events for the Southeast region of the company, and I was going to their property in New Orleans and Fort Lauderdale and the different ones in Atlanta, and kind of running all of that. At the time, I still knew nothing about craft beer, but of all things, I went to an Atlanta Convention and Visitors Bureau networking event at a brewery in Atlanta, and that's how I met my business partner. I had only been to one of those in my life, and that was the one I went to, and that's how I met Anthony.
That's awesome. I'm sitting here, my wheels are turning, Rob, about, you out there in LA, communicating with some big time names, and then, adversity hit. You had to come back home, didn't have any money, looking for a job, and you took the opportunity that was given, and you said, be the best that you could be where you were. And there's an old saying is, where your feet are, be the best you are where your feet are. And you did that. And then you promoted yourself all the way through. I think a lot of times people, when they go through adversity, especially when they've had some success, and I can raise my hand for that, when they've had some success, it's tough to humble yourself after that, because you get a sense of entitlement. Well, I should be better than this. I should be doing more than this. I have more knowledge, right? You have more knowledge than being a bar back. I never even heard what a bar back was, by the way. You taught me something. But you had more knowledge than that, but you decided, hey, I'm going to be the best where my feet are. And then look where it took you. It took you to a path where, we'll hear the story later about, how you and your business partner even started Wild Leap. So you guys met at a networking event, okay? Just first time you met him.
Mm-hmm.
So how'd that conversation go?
So in parallel to what I was doing at Gerber Group, I met some guys in LA that buy out large venues for big holidays like Halloween, New Year's Eve, and they started buying out our properties for these big events. And we got to talking, and they wanted to do more stuff in Atlanta, but they wanted to do it with someone that they trusted, and they didn't know anybody else in Atlanta. And so we started talking. And so in parallel, while I was doing stuff, working at Gerber Group, doing all the marketing and events, we started buying out local venues to host these other events. So like we would book the Egyptian Ballroom at the Fox Theater, or the ballroom at the Westin Peachtree Plaza Hotel in downtown, or Ventanas in downtown. But this one day, walking into this brewery called Red Brick, I got the idea. Well, what if we did an event here at a brewery? That could be pretty cool. And so I asked the staff, like, hey, who would I talk to about booking an event here? And then they pointed to this guy, Anthony. And so I pitched him on the idea of doing a New Year's event and calling it Brew Year's Eve. Super cheesy, but eventually we came to an agreement, and the first year 1,800 people showed up.
Wow.
And so that was in like 2013, I think.
Yeah.
And so after that, it was on. Like we started doing tons of events together at Red Brick, Halloween and New Year's, and it was a lot of fun. We were doing stuff in food events and concerts and things like that in like Candler Park and other places in Atlanta. And that went on for several years. How we got to LaGrange and how we got to starting this brewery was a mutual friend of Anthony's said that the folks in LaGrange are looking to bring a craft brewery to downtown LaGrange. It's part of their master development plan. And they have this idea that they want to host a beer festival to meet all of these breweries and convince one of them to move operations to LaGrange. And so, Anthony brought me in and said, hey, do you want to do this beer festival? And like I said, we were doing a lot of beer focused events in Atlanta. We said, sure. And the difference immediately that struck us was that in Atlanta, you can't sneeze and, scratch your head without getting 3 permits from the city. Like it's difficult. And I remember many times being in the mayor's office on a Friday afternoon, wondering if he was going to sign my permit for an event that we had 3,000 tickets sold for the next day.
Wow.
And it was stressful. And it's like, there's got to be a better way. So here we come to LaGrange, and we start speaking with, Bobby Carmichael at the DLDA and Barbie Watts. And they're so nice and welcoming and like eager to help, and it was really very easy to work on this event with them, and they were eager to bring business to downtown. And at some point, we kind of looked at each other and said, "This is really nice. Like let's see how this beer festival goes." So we threw the first LaGrange Craft Beer Festival in 2015, and it was great. It was a lot of fun, and people were so nice and excited about the event, and it was so easy to work with the city and all the various municipalities. And at that point, we just kind of both looked at each other and said, "No, we're not inviting another brewery down here. We're gonna start a brewery down here." And that's really the genesis of how Wild Leap started.
Which is kind of crazy for LaGrange to want a brewery in LaGrange because, Nick and I are born and raised here in LaGrange. And, this is essentially the old school Bible Belt. And just up until a few years ago, you couldn't buy beer on Sunday.
Yeah.
I remember it like it was, we are not selling beer on Sunday here in LaGrange. I don't care what you say. And then they compromised. And then, it's 12 o'clock, I think, now to this day that you have to wait till 12 noon on Sunday to buy a beer.
Yeah, I think part of it was because they recognize that LaGrange is a great place to grow up, but they're losing people once they graduate high school.
Yeah.
They're not coming back.
So true.
So we need to bring more cool stuff to downtown and the surrounding areas so people want to come back and start a family here. And you have this downtown that the Callaway Foundation and others have done such a great job of building up. It's like it's kind of this was to us this unpolished gem of like people are hungry for good programming and things to do, and we got to figure out a way to do it. Now granted, every time we told somebody, whether it was friends or family, that we wanted to start a craft brewery in a place called LaGrange that I think at the time was like 30,000 population, it was like, you're nuts. So the whole idea behind the name Wild Leap originally started with, two guys kind of leaving comfortable lives and jobs in Atlanta and taking a wild leap and starting a craft brewery in a small town of LaGrange. And, granted, the story of Wild Leap has evolved so much more because it's certainly not about us. It's about you. It's about the community. It's, who can't identify with taking chances, whether it be in your career path or, your hobbies or your love life, following your passions, doing what you love. We wanted to create a brand that resonated with everyone. And to top it off, it's like, as an outsider to the craft beer industry, Anthony had been in it for many years, and Chris, our chief brewing officer, had been a home brewer and worked at the brewery with Anthony for many years. Like, as an outsider, it was very off-putting in that you walk into a lot of breweries and they're not very welcoming. They kind of like, if you don't know this kind of IPA or this hops, it's like they make you feel stupid. And it's like, no. You want to shepherd people through the process of understanding what the offerings are and help them choose and be welcoming. We're not in the business of making people feel like crap. It's the opposite. And so really from day one, the word inclusive as opposed to exclusive really kind of set the tone for the company. And one of my proudest, moments as a business owner is like when we'll like throw these big events and stuff, you've got, young parents with strollers in one hand and a beer in the other, and you got kids running around and you got grandparents, and this is a community meeting spot. And we felt that LaGrange was a perfect place for that. And I think, all the folks that we were working with at the time, Spear Burdett and Bobby Carmichael and the DLDA, like, they vetted us hard. They wanted to make sure that we weren't a bunch of knuckleheads coming in to wreck their town. But on the flip side, it just reinforced that what we were trying to bring here was a good fit.
Yeah. So you had to start a brewery. You had to get a master brewer. Did Anthony have a relationship with the master?
Yeah. So Anthony and Chris had been best friends, I think, since college.
Okay.
And the funny thing about Chris is that he was a longtime home brewer, but he didn't actually brew at Red Brick where Anthony and him worked. He worked like in the tap room, but he was the guy that everybody went to when they had a problem, like in terms of brewing or trying to figure out, like he was the guy they would go to. And so when we made this decision to start the company, like it was really Anthony. It was like, Chris is the guy. There's no way. Like he is the one. And so, it was great to have that piece of the puzzle figured out immediately. Because, there's a lot of, sometimes in this industry, a lot of brewers and distillers and stuff, they kind of hop around, but, we've been around open in LaGrange for over 5 years, but we've been a company for 6+ years. So, the consistency of having everybody in place from day one, I think has been extremely helpful.
So you guys started in what, 2016?
Yeah, we formed the LLC in 2015. As we're opening this new second location in Atlanta, I feel like it's bringing back a lot of memories because this is the hardest thing I think we've ever done. But then I go back to the days of like pitching our little PowerPoint to local Atlanta LaGrange investors and trying to convince them that like they should give us money to start this brewery.
Yeah.
I think that's the hardest thing because, we got a lot of no's and it took a long time. Now, granted, hindsight's 2020. Like we have people come up to and say, I can't believe we didn't invest, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah.
Yeah,
But
Of course.
I'm proud to say that 90% of our investors are based in LaGrange. The rest are friends and family.
that's huge. Yeah.
So, and that hasn't changed.
Yeah. So, and that was going to be my next question. Y'all don't have a pile of cash to get it rolling. You had to get investors, pitching them on an idea, getting a lot of no's. In our line of profession, sometimes somebody brand new will get a no and they just fall apart. You went through a lot of no's because you had a dream, because you saw the opportunity of what it could be. You said the story has evolved. Your logo, I didn't realize this, but the logo, the buffalo, there's a big why behind the buffalo. Tell everybody about the why behind the logo of the buffalo on the Wild Leap.
Yeah. So sometimes I'll look back and look at all the original files of like what could have been the logo, and there was some like wild stuff. It was like a bird inside an alligator's mouth, or like deer. I think the entire animal kingdom was covered at some point. But when we've solidified the name and kind of the concept behind that, we wanted to find a really strong and powerful image that you see that and you don't even have to see our name. That that's Wild Leap.
Yeah.
Think about the best companies in the world, the Apples, the Nikes and stuff. Like you see their logo, you don't really need anything else. That's a bit, it's a bit far-fetched to think that we could be that, but that was the attitude. It's like, we need to cement this thing into people's consciousness. And so when we saw the buffalo, we thought, well, this is an animal that normally like roams in packs and, kind of a follower. But this particular buffalo on the logo, he's by himself. He's forging his own path, taking his own wild leap. And we thought that was really fitting. And honestly, we had looked at many different logos and hired and fired many different designers. But as soon as that one came in, we're like, yep, that's it.
Yeah. I even read on here, it said, you must be all in. The buffalo you got to be all in what you're doing. Talk to everybody today about your commitment level in owning a business and how you have to be all in. You guys didn't have a plan B. It's like, hey, we got to make this work, right?
Yeah. And again, the timeliness of all of this is interesting because, as we've been working to open this Atlanta location for 3 years, first going through the pandemic and then, supply chain crunches and construction challenges. It goes back to this one quote that Anthony and I would send to each other back and forth pretty often, especially in the early days when we were just wondering, are we ever going to get enough funds to get this thing off the ground? And it was like I guess the synopsis is, if it was easy, then everybody would do
That's
it.
right.
And it's hard. And it's not like, we don't say that as like a complaint. It's that if you really want something, and you want to be great at it, you have to work really, really hard. And then once you get it, you have to work harder to protect it. Um, you know, I'll fight to the death for this brand, and this is our lives. There is no plan B. I don't want to not do this one day and like, I don't know, go start a hedge fund or something like that. It's like this is it, and to have the ability to grow this, and then also to kind of for the octopus to have so many legs in terms of like you don't have to just be a craft brewery. Who says you have to do that? You can add other types of products and you can add other venues. There's no roadmap, and if there is a roadmap, we're not paying attention to it because ultimately it's about what are the things that interest us and how can we expand the business in an intelligent and meaningful way accordingly and bring something new.
What was the first beer you guys made?
I have some pictures of it, but I think the first two beers was a Radler, which is like, kind of half beer, half juice. And then I think it was Local Gold. It was a long time ago. I have like timestamp pictures of it, but it was Chris in his garage hand filling beer bottles and then like with this contraption of like putting the cap on and stuff. And it's a funny thing because I look back on some of those original decks of what we were sending investors in terms of like what the beer trends were at the time, which was like low ABV IPAs, Radlers, like things like that. And then by the time we got funded and were up and running, those were not beer trends at all. They crashed and burned. So it's kind of funny in that like you say low ABV IPA, that was, or I forgot the term behind it. But yeah, that was a bad word by then. So, it's also just about being nimble and understanding what's happening in the market and adjusting accordingly.
I saw where you the Chance IPA, it come behind taking chances. You guys took a chance, and it worked out, and there's so many times where, we take chances and it don't work. But if you truly do have a dream, you keep taking chances, I mean, you got to be smart, you can't, go broke, but it's like, you talk about how much do you invest, how much do you put forth, before it's over. I say you go, if you really believe in it, you just keep going. Eventually it's going to work out. If you truly have that dream in your heart, things will work out if you just don't quit.
Yeah. I feel like we're very lucky in a sense that all of us at the company bring different things to the table. There's not a huge amount of overlap. And what I mean by that is, you have Anthony, who's our CEO, and very good with the numbers and really overall operations of the company. My passion is marketing and branding and sales. You have Chris, that's like the mad genius that creates all of our recipes and can, and it's not even just beer anymore. It's spirits and RTDs and all that kind of stuff. And then you have Brittany, who's has run our tap room in LaGrange, running Atlanta, and just bringing a very strict operations type of mentality to be able to run these beasts of venues. And so, if it was up to me solely kind of running the show, maybe we would have gone broke. But that's what Anthony's really good. The way I describe it is like, I'm like the wild bowler that's like, trying to throw strikes, and he's the guardrails that makes sure that we're not throwing gutter balls all the time.
Mm-hmm. It's funny you say that. We're in the financial service business. We deal with a lot of life insurance companies, and there are no sales and marketing guys that are president or CEOs of insurance companies. It's always finance or actuarial folks, actuarial backgrounds.
Yeah.
Because, it takes that levelness, because we're like, hey, let's go, let's go conquer the world. But you got to have both, you have to have it all. I love the story, every dream begins with an idea. Every journey begins with one wild leap. So it's really cool. I had no clue until, preparing for this podcast about the symbols and you guys' story, for what you've been through and where you're going. So let's go back because I remember when COVID hit. Had y'all had planned to do the vodka and the slushies, or did it? Because it hit, when COVID hit. I mean, I know talking with people, everybody was rushing, so y'all wouldn't run out, so they could, it was curbside. Everybody was trying to get them before they ran out, and y'all'd run out of different flavors. Talk about having vodka and having the slushies.
Yeah. So we opened our doors in LaGrange in 2017, and we started as a brewery, but we always knew we wanted to expand further. We didn't know exactly how. We just knew that was the beginning of the journey and not the end. So in 2019, we became a distillery and made the determination that we wanted to start with vodka. Just in terms of, level of difficulty and accessibility, and also, how do we offer this in the tap room in a meaningful way? Well, when we started with vodka, we knew that just doing vodka cranberries and vodka sodas really wasn't going to cut it. So the bar in LaGrange was built as a beer bar. There was no cocktail wells or anything like that. And that was a challenge at first, but we knew we had to be authentic in everything that we did. And that was a perfect example. So when we launched with vodka in 2019, we created an entire craft cocktail menu of hand-pressed juices and fresh ingredients. And, we're going to have amazing cocktails, and we're going to change them often and keep people engaged, because we knew that, not everybody likes beer. And so that was amazing. And the response we had was fantastic. And eventually we took the plunge and bought this giant slushy machine those things are insanely expensive. But I think it paid for itself in 6 weeks. and the team started creating amazing homemade recipes of all these different slushies. And that was going great. And then obviously, March of 2020 hit and really changed everything. We were riding a wave of popularity that was really exciting at the time. We had just been named Best New Brewery in America by USA Today in 2019. And the second that happened, we were out of beer. It was DEFCON 3. There were sirens going off in the tap room in my head. It was just we got to make more beer. We got to make more beer. And
right now, everything's brewed out of LaGrange, Georgia right now, right?
That's correct,
okay.
Yeah. And so then we added vodka and cocktails and slushies, and it was great. So then in 2020, of course, COVID hit, and it was a really weird time because, when you buy more beer tanks, it's not like at Amazon where you buy them on a Thursday and, Prime shows up at your door on a Saturday. All of these things are custom built and take many, many months to get. And they're really expensive. So imagine, I think we spent, I don't even know, $100,000 or something like that, maybe more, on more beer tanks. It was we need more beer tanks. We need more beer tanks. Can't come fast enough. The day the NBA season was canceled is when these tanks showed up. And so it went from, we need more beer tanks, to how the hell are we going to fill these? Because the world just shut down and I don't know what's going on. If you recall, all during that time, the Final Four was in Atlanta.
Yep.
And so we had truckfuls of beer literally going to Atlanta for there was a Taylor Swift concert, there was a Kings of Leon concert. They turned around and brought the beer back. It's
wow.
Final Four's canceled. We don't need this anymore. And it was crazy. And, so we had these new tanks. Nobody wants beer anymore. And, oh yeah, by the way, we had to close the tap room because we don't really know what this COVID thing is. And, so I think I'll never forget the day the NBA season was canceled. Anthony, Chris, Brittany, and I, we just locked ourselves in the conference room and we said, well, how do we figure this out? And not only that, but, we had at the time 40, 45 employees. We have more now. How are we going to keep this place going, and not go bankrupt, right? And so the end result of that was, okay, well, we're going to spin up a curbside pickup website like now. We're going to have a 10 by 10 out on, near the street. Everybody can buy beer and crowlers and all that kind of stuff. And there's only one problem. How do you sell fresh cocktails to go? Okay, well, we figured out that we have these like large 45-gallon drums. We can create like an assembly line of our people and start making massive batches of these fresh cocktails. And then we can hand pour them in cans and then seal them in our canning line. And so that's what happened. And it was like so incredible that like our entire taproom team went from operating as normal to like, we've got these tables set up and everyone's socially distanced and masks, and we're all trying to make cocktails hoping that, people would enjoy this. And so thankfully, we started offering these and it was like, boom.
Yeah.
Lines around the block. It was nuts. And I think that was the time we realized, all right, we're probably gonna get through this thing. Now, granted, our tap room was closed for 10 months. So there was a lot of curbside pickup going on. But the irony, of course, is that there were days that we were making more money selling beer and cocktails to go in a tiny 10 by 10 tent than we were when we were hosting 1,500 people for a festival.
Wow.
Granted, it seems like, everybody was an alcoholic at that time, but, it was an unprecedented time. What are you going to do? So that was a really pretty amazing thing to look back on. And it also helped shape how we started to innovate, right? We were doing these cocktails, and then all of a sudden retailers started reaching out. It's like, well, how do we get these? I don't know, because they only last 7 or 10 days.
Yeah.
So we had to, then look at like the sales and think, okay, well, these are the top 5 selling cocktails. Let's go find a beverage lab and figure out a way to reformulate these for shelf stability so we can get them in the market. We always knew we wanted to get into the ready-to-drink cocktail market, but we were struggling for months. It's like, well, how do we do something different? Like Cutwater and all these guys, they can do vodka soda in a can with a touch of lime or a touch of this, and there's nothing wrong with that. But then who cares about us if we were to do the exact same thing? So by doing it this way, these things like strawberry mango and creamsicle mojito that are like difficult to make at home, now you can get them in a can. And so there's our in. We can do something different from all the other folks, and it went great. It worked, and we've been building ever since.
Where all do you ship to? Well, how many states are you shipping to right now?
Yeah, so we're distributed like in a traditional sense in Georgia, South Carolina, and Alabama. We also have a partnership with Tavor, where they sell our beer in like 30 different states in the United States. The thing about it there is, if you're familiar with it, it's an app for like beer lovers, and you can buy beer by the can from breweries that aren't in your area, and that's how you do it. And so we've got people in 30 different states like buying Alpha by the can, and it sells out instantly.
Wow.
And it's just wild to think about that. And then, at different points, it was really big pre-COVID, and it's starting to come back. We've been shipping to about 12 different countries as well. We just keep quiet about that because, frankly, imagine the person that like walks into a package store in Atlanta and can't get the new Alpha, but they see some guy in like, South Korea or like, London drinking Alpha. They're going to be upset. So we do it, but we don't really talk about it.
Yeah.
It is kind of cool though.
Well, you guys do some great events, and I've always wondered, why, and I learned. I want you to tell the audience, why you don't have food served out of the brewery here. I know you have vendors that come in, the taco wars, the wings, the wing contest. I mean,
Grilled cheese.
Yeah, grilled cheese. Great events that you better get there early, because I've come in on the tail end of it. And I'll see the crowd. I'm like, I'm out,
Yeah.
But tell the audience, why, 'cause I think there's a law behind it, why you can't serve food.
I mean, there's not necessarily a law behind it. We can do it. I think for a long time, we really just wanted to focus on what we were most passionate about. and that is making super high quality craft beverages, providing an exceptional guest experience in terms of customer service, and also creating community events. In the earlier years, a lot of these events were ticketed, and then at some point we realized we would rather not have that barrier of entry in LaGrange, to where we were always about being inclusive and not exclusive. And at some point we realized, what? If we build it, they will come. Yes, it costs a lot of money to do these events, and we are out of pocket regardless of one person or 2,000 people show up. But if we give people a great experience and we make it attractive and follow through on our commitments, then they'll come. And it's been crazy to think about the amount of large scale festivals that we do in a given year. And actually, before coming here today, I was working with Whitney, who's our assistant GM in LaGrange, and looking at the 2023 event calendar, and it's significantly bigger than 2022. And it's going to be great. And so our goal is, not only creating community focused events where everybody is welcome, but also being able to elevate different food vendors that can come and make a bunch of money.
Yeah.
We don't charge our food vendors. We don't take any of their revenue. We just ask that they actually show up if we booked them.
Yeah.
Sometimes that can be dicey. But, that's it. It's all about just creating a fun experience. And, we'll learn lessons from time to time. Like we did, what was it? We did Taco Wars this past year.
Yeah.
And that was a big lesson in that everybody loves tacos. I don't remember seeing the plaza, shoulder to shoulder ever.
That was the one I showed up to. I'm like,
Yeah.
I mean, it was crazy.
So
We did eventually make it back there towards the
Yeah,
end
we made
of
it
though.
back. Yeah.
I was like, so, got to figure out maybe just capping it off.
It's a
and
good problem to have.
one in, one out type of deal after a while.
Yeah, that's definitely a good problem, and it sounds like you've been really good at solving problems. Being innovative, and going back to where you in essential were hanging with rock stars to humbling yourself. How I want to talk about. You mentioned earlier about when you made a comment about going to LaGrange. You had people trying to tell you that's a bad idea. You don't want to go to LaGrange. How did you guys insulate yourselves to not listening to the noise, not listening to people say, you shouldn't do this, I wouldn't do that? Do you have like mentors in your life? Like, what do you do to guard yourself as a professional, being an entrepreneur, to drown out the noise and listen to the right people and not the wrong people?
Well, I think it's a balance. I mean, if enough people are telling you it's not the right move, it's usually the opposite. A good example is when we've been looking for an Atlanta tap room for a long time, since at least 2019. And we looked at the Beltline, we looked at Buckhead and Midtown, like all the spots that we knew, like right off the bat, would be awesome. But if you know the history of our building in LaGrange, it's a historical building. It was built in the early 40s, originally as I believe a Chevy dealership, and then became the Westbrook Tire Center for 40 years, and then it was vacant from 2008 until the time that we came about. And so it was on this piece of South downtown LaGrange in a beautiful historic building, and we thought, if we can renovate that thing and make it state of the art, like that would be amazing. And us being event guys, we used to have to rent out Candler Park and all these, and to pay for all these other venues, to host these events. And then this was like our playground, right? Like we can host these events, control all of the elements to make sure that they're fantastic, right? Fast forward several years, my wife sends me an article in, now it's a defunct website called Curbed, but it's kind of like the Eater of real estate. And it was about the Gulch area in downtown Atlanta, and how it's really just been like a tailgate spot for years and years. But it's like in this amazing area, nestled between Mercedes-Benz Stadium and State Farm Arena, Georgia World Congress Center, and it's just been parking lots, right? Well, the guy Tony Ressler, the majority shareholder of the Hawks.
Yeah.
He was getting into his car one day, right when he finished buying the team, and he's like, "What's that?" And somebody's like, "Yeah, it's the Gulch. It's just a bunch of parking lots, people hang out." He's like, "I'm gonna buy that and turn that into LA Live." And I know what LA Live is. It used to be a scary place in downtown Atlanta next to the Staples Center, and they turned it into this sprawling metropolis of hotels, restaurants, retail. It's amazing. And so, when we found out that they were going to do this property, and then that the building that we were looking at was, the former headquarters of Norfolk Southern Railways, also historical building. It's a $5 billion renovation, and we can be in another South downtown in Atlanta and, have a massive property to do events and all that kind of stuff. It didn't matter that everybody told us, like, why would you go to downtown? It's dangerous. Or, why don't you go to the Beltline or this? It's like, no. You just kind of have to trust that these things align for a reason. And, if you can create the type of experience that you're looking for, then, I mean, there's a huge opportunity. And as we're like days away from opening this place, I can tell you, this is going to be something unlike people have ever seen in Atlanta. And, I've never given birth or anything like that, but it feels like it was, making triplets to get it out.
Yeah.
But it'll be worth it.
Yeah.
So you just try not to listen to folks and trust that, if the numbers make sense, and the opportunity's right, then it's going to work out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing what you guys have done from day one. And, with this new venue in Atlanta, I mean, it's just going to take off from there. Do you guys have, a vision to have more than LaGrange in Atlanta?
Yes. The answer is yes.
Okay.
So LaGrange, the way I look at it is like we planted the flag. That is home base. It's the mothership. That's not changing. Within our building, we have enough, tanks and brewing equipment to do something like 27,000 barrels a year. Right now, we're in the top 150 breweries in America in terms of production.
Oh, wow.
And if we max out that place, I think we'll be in the top 110 or 20. Anthony's better at that than I am in terms of knowing that stuff, but pretty damn close. Now, we have a second LaGrange facility that is not a customer-facing facility. That's twice the size of that. We're going to be doing all of our spirits and ready-to-drink cocktail production there. So I don't care if we do 20 more Wild Leaps. The idea is that LaGrange is home base, and it always will be. But yes, we are very eager to add more tap rooms in strategic areas, and I think that as soon as we open our doors in Atlanta, those opportunities will come to fruition pretty fast.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
based on the volume, are you guys still considered a craft beer?
Mhm.
Okay.
I don't know what the numbers are, but there's something very obscene that we're not close to yet. Like, I'm pretty sure Sweetwater is still a craft brewery.
Gotcha.
And also there's like an ownership thing too. If Anheuser-Busch goes and buys a brewery, then you're no longer a craft brewery. So that's why like Wicked Weed's no longer a craft brewery, but like New Belgium, I think, still is.
So will you guys brew out of Atlanta as well?
Yeah. So the way our licensing works is we can only sell what we make.
Okay.
Some folks have asked, like, are you going to have other products? We're not legally allowed to. We are a brewery, winery, and distillery, and we will have all three types of products in Atlanta that we make, along with, of course, what LaGrange. The same thing with LaGrange. A certain percentage of beer will be brewed on site in Atlanta, but I mean, we have a massive production facility in LaGrange. Atlanta is, LaGrange 30-barrel brew house, Atlanta 5-barrel brew house. But the cool thing about Atlanta is that not only will we have these very exclusive brews that are only available there, but the way that Anthony and Chris kind of constructed this thing is that, typically when you brew beer, you're either putting it in a can or a keg. In Atlanta, the beer we brew will go from the tank to these giant serving tanks up on the second floor that each one of them I think are 4,000 pounds when there's liquid and between the liquid and steel. And then when you pull the tap, it's coming straight from the tank. So it doesn't get any fresher than that. And the optics on this thing are so cool. The tanks are from the Netherlands. Like, we wanted to create a lot of different, fun showpieces as part of this venue. Because, it's Atlanta. We're surrounded by one of the biggest, most active stadiums in North America, the third most active arena in North America, hundreds of thousands of hotel rooms. Like, we got to pull out all the stops. So all of that and more is going to be a part of it.
So you guys are when is Atlanta opening up? What day?
December 26th.
December 26th. Wow, opening up. We got you told me you got a big group. We got some friends. We're big Georgia fans.
Yeah.
We got some really close friends that are Ohio State fans. So you got a big group of Ohio State fans coming down.
We've got tons of groups of folks. We've been very fortunate in that we've been actively marketing the venue now for a long time, and the groups start arriving, I think, December 29. Okay. So we anticipate 29, 30, 31. It's going to be madness. And then we have a ticketed New Year's Eve event from 9 p.m. to 1 a.m.
Are you sold out yet?
Close.
Okay. How do they buy tickets?
Just go to wildleap.com and you'll see the links if you scroll down on where the events are.
Okay.
But yeah, I think it's going to be a great event, a great time. And we continue to have New Year's Eve events in LaGrange. This year we're doing a masquerade ball. That's going to be a lot of fun. So we try to continue to, create different looks for different events, and there's something for everyone.
You guys have done just a phenomenal job. It is inclusive. It's very family oriented. We take our kids. You see families taking their kids to the outdoor events. Rob, this has been fun.
Thank you.
Just hearing your story, and I look forward to seeing Wild Leap just continue to grow across the country. JB?
No, I got to do one of the final walkthroughs with you when I first met you, when y'all were getting ready to open up the location here. Mm-hmm. And I was like, man, now seeing what it's doing now, you guys saw that a long time before anybody started, any construction. The investors, they saw that vision that you guys see now. So, and it's paying dividends because you guys have went full steam, all in, right? You're not 80% in. You guys are all, you guys going to Atlanta, that is a wild leap, right?
Yeah.
Could go from LaGrange saying, hey, how can we duplicate and, do even bigger things in Atlanta? So it's a great, great story. I look forward to seeing the rest of it written with you guys.
Well, thank you. We, we're very cognizant of what we've been fortunate enough to build in LaGrange, and we're not trying to duplicate that in Atlanta. We want to do something completely different. So a perfect example of kind of what's happening in LaGrange is, there's Taco Wars and Burger Bash and all these different events that people grow to love. We're not just doing those in Atlanta as well. We're going to be doing something completely different, and we're already working on a huge calendar full of events, everything from food, music, and kind of other type of events to, we plan to be the place that you want to be before, during, and after Atlanta United, Falcons, Hawks, bowl games, all of these things. So to be able to even think about like doing that, it's pretty mind blowing.
It's gonna be a lot of fun. Yeah. It's gonna be a lot of fun with you guys.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate being a part of this, and
yeah,
would love to invite you guys to Atlanta to see it in person.
We'll be there for sure. All right, thanks guys.